Hello, I'm glad you're here. This is Jenna from McGuire. So today I'm taking one die set and showing you many different ways to use it. Don't worry, if you don't have a die set like the one I'm using, I will share other ideas of other products you can use. Now this will include masking, shaker cards, die cutting tricks, stamping, ink blending, and much, much more. This was just one of those times where I took a product and I had a lot of fun using it. So I hope that something here inspires you and that you'll try it too. Now let's look at the die set that I'm focusing on today. This is the Gina K Designs Master Layouts 11 die set. It's really special to me because I had always wanted to have a postage themed die set. Talked to Gina about it, and this is the amazing die set that she created. We did some brainstorming together and she knocked it out of the park. There are so many ways this die set can be used. In this video, I'm mostly focusing on the two large dies on the left and the fun ways you can use them. But I will share some ways to use the other dies in future videos. These dies are just basic shapes, plus a die that creates the postage edge to go around it. Again, so many fun things you can do: masking, die cutting, shaker cards, and much more. And we'll do a few today. By the way, you might be wondering why that die on the left has so much metal around the outside edge. Well, there's a brilliant reason why, and I'll demonstrate a bit later. And again, if you see me use a product that you don't have, don't worry. I will make other suggestions as we go. Let's get started with this example, which involves some masking. For my masking, I'm using Gina K Masking Magic, which is by far my favorite product to mask with. The reason is it has a nice coating, I guess you would say, on it that keeps the ink from bleeding through. So you can ink a lot over it and you don't have to worry about it bleeding through to your project. However, if you don't have masking paper, you could always cut from some scrap cardstock and try using that. All right, now here I have die cut from the large postage die, and you can see how if you run something sharp along the back where the holes are, it easily pops them all out at once. I have a trick to share to line up this window masking piece onto that faux postage die cut. Now, the way I do this is I take the little masking window pieces out, the little ones that popped out, and I place them onto my die cut. That's easy to center. And I just do two opposite corners. So they're centered on there. Then I take the window masking and I line it up so that those masking pieces we put on our die cut line up with the holes on our window masking piece. That is just an easy way to make sure it lines up. The masking paper you can actually see through a little bit, so you could line it up on your own by eyeballing it, but this is just an easy trick to make sure that the window mask lines up nicely with the postage die cut behind it, so you can see through and see those holes. Another nice thing about this is the masking paper is sticky, so it's holding our project in place. I place this all in my MISTI stamping tool because I plan to stamp on it in a moment, so I figured I might as well start out here. I'm using an ink blending brush and Gina K Designs dye inks. You can use absolutely any inks that you want to for this, but I am really enjoying the color combination of her lilac colors, orchid colors, and blue raspberry. You'll see me use them a few times in this video, but do whatever color combos you want. My projects today are mostly like a snowflake theme. However, these cards could easily be done maybe with some fall colors and leaf images instead, or you could do spring colors and do floral images instead. Really, this technique here can be done with whatever stamps you have. So after I put down some ink, don't worry, it doesn't have to be beautifully blended. It's time to do some stamping. For my stamping, I'm using a set from the new Gina K Designs Holiday Cheer Card Kit. This is probably her best value card kit ever. It has two large 6x8 stamp sets and coordinating dies. It has some cardstock, a bottle of Connect glue, and a free gift of a great die set that I'll be using later in this video that has some dies to create kind of a winter scene. You could also use some of those houses for any time of the year. So a lot is packed in here, but for this particular card, I'll be starting with the 6x8 stamp set called Blizzard, and this is included in the kit. I really like the different sizes of snowflakes, which is really helpful when you're doing a bunch of different cards, and it really is helpful for the cards I'm doing today. So you'll see me use lots of these. The coordinating dies are included in the kit. So I chose a few of the snowflakes to arrange over these windows. I still have my masking paper in place. So after I've got them positioned, it's time to ink them up, and I am inking up each snowflake with a different ink, one of the inks that I use to ink the background. Since I did the background with a light application of ink, these same inks can be used to be stamped on top of them and it appears darker. And I could have done each of these snowflakes individually, and then I wouldn't have to worry about trying to ink each one up a different color, but this just saved me time. And since I'm using ink cubes for most of my inking, it was easy to do. Also, it's okay if one color gets on another color stamp. You've just got this colorful background. It doesn't have to be perfect. So after I've stamped all of these snowflakes over our windows, I thought it'd be fun to also stamp some snowflakes with a white ink. One of the best ways to create the look of dimension on an inked and stamped background is to do some in color and some in white ink. There's something really beautiful about that white stamped on top of the color. Now I'm going to stamp it with white pigment ink, but I will kind of dab off a little bit of the white so it's not so bright. If you want this to be super bright white, you would have to heat set all of your ink and then do white heat embossing. But I'm looking for something soft, and I think it really turns out nice in the end. I also wanted some more dots and little snowflakes, so I'm using the new Gina Designs Wishing You stamp set. You can see there are beautiful sentiments in here, which I use a lot in this video, and some smaller snowflakes and dots that'll be perfect to add to this card and cards later in this video. I think oftentimes those little dot or small images in sets get overlooked, but they're great for filling in little open spaces, especially when we want to create these 4 windows full of color and dimension. And now for the best part, we can remove that masking paper and reveal the color behind. I love the crisp results. And the best part is this masking paper holds up really well, so I can use it on other projects too. You'll see some later. All right, so there we have our faux postage look. I just love these 4 panels of color. That smooth result would be great for a 1-layer card, and the detail of the faux postage from the die. However, I wanted dimension behind my postage. I wanted it to sit up off the card. I could die cut a few more of the postage pieces and glue it behind our inked one, or I could use foam tape. But I have these white rectangles left over from some other cards, which you'll see later in this video, so I thought I'd put them to use. I glued 2 or 3 of them together and then glued them to the back of this die cut. I just want to make good use of these leftover pieces. I'm always trying to find ways to use my scraps to add dimension. For a sentiment, I'm using one of my new favorite die sets, which is the Thanks and Shadow die from Gina K. I cut the shadow from white and the word thanks from a blue cardstock that matched our inking. And I'm putting that right in the center. At this point, I thought it'd be fun to add more to my inked panels. I just think it's fun to fill those with as much as I can. So I took the sentiment that says peace and love. It's from the Wishing You stamp set that I showed you earlier. And I cut the words apart. I promise it's okay to cut your stamps apart as long as you cut between the images. So I cut between the words peace and love. And I'm stamping those words kind of randomly in those inked window panels, just to add some more interest to it. I even stamped some vertical just to kind of change things up. I could have done this earlier when we were doing the snowflake stamping, but I didn't think of it at the time. So even though my thanks sentiment is glued in there, it's okay. I can just stamp around it. I originally thought that I would put this onto a white card panel and then onto a blue note card, but I changed my mind at this point. I didn't want that blue around the outside edge. I wanted all the color in the center. So I instead have a white note card here, and I'm using the Gina Designs Swiss Dot embossing folder on the front panel of the note card. This note card is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I'll run that through my die cut machine as I would any basic embossing folder. For my Spellbinders Platinum machine, it means the platform, the embossing folder, and then the embossing plate. When I run this through, I'll end up with a dot pattern on the front of our note card, and I just love that look. I use this embossing folder a lot because it works with a variety of themes and styles of cards and just adds a bit of interest. However, I will say Gina just came out with a bunch of great new embossing folders, including one with snowflakes. I didn't have it at the time of making this video, but I will link to them below if you want to take a closer look. All right, so I thought I'd add some sparkle and shine to the thanks. So I'm coloring over the thanks die cut with a glitter pen. Using a glitter pen really gives a lot of sparkle without changing the colors. Then I'm putting on a coat of Ranger Glossy Accents. I recently put my Ranger Glossy Accents into one of Gina K Design's fine tip bottles, and it's really worked well. All you need to do is when you're done using it is to tap it onto your desk and then kind of burp it into a piece of cloth or baby wipe or something to clean it. And that will get the extra glossy accents out of the nozzle so it's clear. And then you can put the little cap back on the top and it won't clog up. I'm really liking that. So here is a look at the completed card. I did stamp "and love" onto a white cardstock strip. That is from the Wishing You stamp set that I showed you earlier. I also added some little iridescent confetti to the background so that it would catch the light and add some shine. Here you can see the look of dimension we created by inking and stamping those panels using the darker ink and the white pigment ink. Now this masking technique would be great for a 1-layer or only 2-layer card if you wanted to, but I really like building up that dimension. And remember, you could change this up to be any occasion. Just use different stamped images over those masked windows and change the sentiment. It's one of those universal designs that works well with what you have. If you don't have a window die like the one I used, you could also take a piece of masking paper and die cut a small square or rectangle 4 times to create your own window masked piece. Okay, here's my next example. I did the same process of masking and inking for this one, but this time I'm cutting the postage apart and adding some die cuts on top. Now I'm not going to show the inking and stamping. It's the same process that I did before. I just changed up the ink colors. Here you can see the results after we remove the mask. Love this technique. All right, so now what's fun about this die is you can cut them apart and get 4 individual postage pieces. So I just cut right down the center of the line of dots in one direction and the center of the line of dots in the other direction. I will add some die cuts onto each of these postage pieces using this die set that's included in the card kit that I showed you. I just die cut them from white cardstock, 2 of each, and glued them together for a little dimension, and then glued them onto our postage pieces. I originally thought that I would use 1 postage piece per card. Just put it in the top center and stamp a small sentiment underneath it for a simple card design. But I changed my mind and decided to use all 4 on 1 card. So here's the card design I came up with. I used a light blue note card that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I again used the Swiss dot embossing folder on the front of it. I glued my 4 postage pieces onto the background using some extra cardstock behind it for dimension. I then stamped peace from that love and peace sentiment in the Wishing You stamp set. And I also put a few snowflakes falling down in the form of iridescent confettis. You could easily change up the theme and feel of this card by changing the colors and the types of die cuts you add on top. You could add flowers, hearts, anything at all. I thought I'd do one more example using that large postage die. However, this time we're not masking the window on top. Instead, we're die cutting. I wanted to create an inked background that looked kind of like a rainbow, and I thought I would use these leftover pieces of masking magic. Whenever I have leftover pieces of masking paper, no matter how small, I keep them for techniques like this. I put a piece down kind of at a little angle so that I could ink up a small stripe at the top. I then lifted that off and shifted it so it overlaps with the inking we've already done. Notice I'm not lining up the masking pieces, nor am I trying to make them straight. This is to be a really fast technique, and by not worrying about them being straight, it's much quicker. Also, you want to make sure that your inking overlaps. See how some of that pink is exposed there? That way, this orange that I'm putting on top overlaps with that bit of pink, creating what looks like another color. You don't have to do a rainbow with this technique. You could just do different shades of different colors, however you want. And I haven't done this technique in a while. It's a great one. I was reminded of it when I saw a similar technique from my friend Dawn over at W+9. She posted a card in my Facebook group that was amazing. I will link to it below. Hopefully she has a video. Hers is a bit different, but it shows how you can use these leftover pieces to mask off overlapping stripes to create a colorful background. Notice that you can reuse the masking paper pieces many times. It may look like the paper is losing its stick because the pieces aren't really sticking to the inked background. That is because masking paper generally doesn't like to stick to wet inked backgrounds. If you want it to stick and lay nice and flat, just heat set your ink a bit first and then it will. Or you could do what I'm doing and allow the edges of the masking paper that hangs off of our background, allow that to stick to whatever work surface you're using and hold it in place that way. All right, now let's do some stamping on this. I've put my piece into my stamping tool and I'm laying the die on top because I'm going to use this die to cut 4 rectangles out of our background. So by putting the die there, I can figure out where to place my snowflakes so they can be seen. I've arranged several snowflakes from the 2 stamp sets I've used earlier, and then I'll close the door on my stamping tool to pick up all of those stamps, and then I can remove the die. Now, I could stamp these all in different colors of ink, but one of my favorite things to do for a tone-on-tone look on a colorful background is to stamp with gray. Here I'm using the Stone Gray color ink from Gina and stamping that on top. I then will move a few of the smaller snowflakes and stamp those with a white pigment ink. I really feel like stamping with a colored ink and then a white pigment ink adds to the look of dimension of these backgrounds, and it doesn't take much time. I will then heat set that because I don't want that white ink to stay wet because I might smear it when I do my die cutting. I will now use that background die to cut 4 rectangles from this colorful background. I can save that negative piece for a different project, maybe cut some strips from it. But here I wanted to use these at the center of our postage die. You could glue these directly to the postage die cut, but I thought it'd be fun to add a little dimension behind it. So I have these scrap white die cuts that I'm gluing to the back. I glued 2 or 3 behind each, and then I'll glue that onto our postage die cut. Remember, adding dimension to your cards is a personal choice. You totally can add it or skip it. I like the dimension, but by all means do whatever you find best for you. After gluing that all together, I added it to a white note card that is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I once again used that Swiss dot embossing folder on the front panel. I added the thanks with black cardstock and the shadow die cut for that with white cardstock. And I added a few silver gems scattered on the background. So here you can see how that gray dries on the rainbow. I think it gives a really cool darkened look there. And then the white adds a little brightness. You could do this also with some basic supplies. Just ink up a background and cut 4 small rectangle die cuts from that background. Then glue them together on a larger white rectangle and add that to your card. All right, now let's change gears and create a shaker card using this Master Layouts die set. This time I'm not using the postage die, just the window die. I think it's important to think of many ways to use a die set when you invest in it, but I will talk about other dies you can use for a similar look. Let's start by doing the inking background that will be behind the shadow box. For this, I am just using the same colors I've used many times. This is the dark lilac, the dark orchid, and the blue raspberry. I love those colors together. I'm applying ink onto a piece of white cardstock, putting down a heavy amount of color. I really want a bold, colorful backdrop for our white die cuts that we're going to add on top. One thing I really think is important to talk about here is that you do not need an excellent blend for this. This will be behind a shaker window and behind die cuts. So don't take a lot of time to get a great blend. Just put down as much color as you can for a bold look. If it doesn't look perfectly blended, it doesn't matter at all. And remember, many dye inks kind of absorb into the paper and soften and smooth, which helps with the blended look over time. Now I'm going to do some stamping on top. I'm stamping with the same colors of ink that I blended with. This will give me a very subtle look when this ink dries. Because I did a dark inked background, I put down a heavy amount of ink. When I stamp on top with the same colors, it's going to be subtle. If I wanted these snowflakes to stand out more, I would definitely want to use a darker ink. The snowflakes are standing out now, but remember, dye ink kind of absorbs and softens, so it will give me a lighter look in the end. And then, of course, I decided to stamp some images with the white pigment ink, and I dabbed off some of that ink to soften it. I didn't want it to be too bright. Just take a dry cloth and press it down, and it'll remove some of that ink while it's still wet. To add even more to this background, I used my glitter pen to make little dots in the background. It's hard to see in the video, but those dots really do sparkle. And I also used a white gel pen to create little dots too. So we'll end up with this fun snowfall, colorful background. And if you want to save time, you could always just use patterned paper for this backdrop instead. Next, I'm creating the walls for my shaker card. I have 4 pieces of white cardstock that are cut to be about 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And I'm taping them at the center of our window die. Now, this window die is really special for 2 reasons. I'll share one now and one later. One great thing about this window die is it has the extra metal around it that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. So it's easy to center this piece of cardstock on the die, and I know it will cut those windows right at the center of this cardstock piece. I'll demonstrate more about this later in this video. After I've cut all 4, I'm cutting the center out of each. This is totally optional. You do not have to do this. I'll explain the difference a little bit later. But for now, I'm cutting the center out of all 4, and then I'll glue all 4 together to form the walls of our shaker window. I do recommend making sure that these are glued together well so that none of your shaker bits fall out when someone goes to shake it. I do have something heavy on my frames to make sure they adhere together nicely. These are paperweights. I'll link to them below, but you could put anything heavy on it that you want. So now all 4 of those frames are glued together, and these form the walls of our shaker. You could instead use foam tape. I just find this gives a better result. I'll glue this onto our inked background. So now we kind of have the well where we can add our shaker bits. First, I'm putting double-sided tape on the top of the frame. This is what I will use to add our acetate window. If you're concerned that there is exposed adhesive on the inside of those walls, you can always use an anti-static powder tool or a dryer sheet. That'll prevent any static in there. I usually don't worry about it though. Now we can fill the well with any little bits that we want. I'm adding in some little confetti shapes that are stars. Not sure where I got these. I've had them for a while. You can put anything in there. The flatter the elements that you put in there, the more shaking you will get. I'll remove the release paper from the top of our frame and lay onto it a piece of acetate that I cut to be the same size as the frame, which is about 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I'll lay that right on top and press firmly to seal it. You could definitely use any kind of leftover clear packaging for this piece. Next, we just need to put something on top of that frame so it looks nice. You could do lots of things. What I decided to do was use the window die from silver cardstock from Gina. That's the piece that you see here. And I'm just trimming the edges off so that I have a window where all of those edges are about the same width. I'm just kind of winging it here, but you could measure it if you want. Now this isn't going to cover up all of that shaker, so I will also cut a piece from white cardstock that will go behind this. So this piece is 4 by 5 1/4 inches. And I'll glue this silver die cut on top of the white die cut, and I'll glue both of those on top of our shaker window. So now we have this clean look to our shaker window, and it looks like you're looking through a window pane and looking out on this fun snowy sky. Now remember how earlier when I stacked my white window die cuts together, I cut the center out, the center panes? The reason I did that was so I could have one big shaker window, but you could have left them in and you would have 4 little shaker windows. Totally up to you. I glued that all onto a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. And now I'm gluing white die cuts on the front of that, using the die set included as a bonus with that Gina K card kit. I chose to keep these die cuts white so that the focus is really on that bold color and the shaker window behind it. The only other thing I added was a greetings sentiment. So I stamped that onto a white cardstock strip and glued it right above the houses. And that is from the Gina K Wishing You stamp set. Here's a closer look at that fun shaker window. You can see the inking, the stamping, and all the little shaker goodies inside. And this was just another way to use that window die included in the set. You could also have done this with just regular rectangle dies and created a large rectangle basic frame instead. By the way, if you like shaker cards, I recommend checking out the Gina K's Circle Shadow shaker dies, which are on the left, or the oval ones, which are on the right. These make it very easy to create shaker windows in a circle or oval shape. You just do multiple frame die cuts, glue them together, and you have the walls of your shaker window. I didn't have time to make one in this video because this video is so long, but I'll try to do so in a future video. I just like these basic dies which make it easy to do shakers. She also has come out with an ornament topper die set, which is brilliant because you can put these with those shaker windows I just showed you to create a shaker ornament, or you could use these with any basic circle die that you may have. The bows could even be used like maybe on a little flower bouquet or on top of a square die cut to make it look like a present. Just many fun ways you could use these. Again, I'm just sharing because I think they're well done. I'll try to use them in the future. Okay, this next card is probably my favorite of the bunch and one that I could make in different themes very easily. This is a window card, and when you open it up, you see this mini inked card on the inside. Remember I said there's a second reason why that window die is brilliant? I'm going to demonstrate it here. But first, let's create that inked mini card for the inside. This is a top folding note card that I'm trimming down to be 3.5 inches by I think 4 3/4 inches, just a bit smaller than our card, but a bit bigger than those window openings. So I've inked the front of this. Now I did nothing fancy. I'm using the same colors of ink that I've used throughout the video and put a pretty heavy amount of ink down. Now I'm using the same snowflakes once again and stamping these on top using the same colors of ink. So again, these will be very, very subtle when they dry, but I wanted some soft snowflake stamping. And of course, I stamped some with white pigment ink. If you want this to be softer, just dab off some of the ink with a dry cloth while it's still wet. If you want it to be crisp white, you could instead white heat emboss it. So once I'm done with my stamping, we have this inked and stamped mini card for the inside of our main card. Now let's do the main card and cut those windows in the front of it. This is super easy to do. I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folding white note card, and I'm taping the die to the front of it. Notice that because this die has that extra metal where the outside edge is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, it lines up easy. So it's really easy to cut that window at the center of our note card. Now I can glue our mini inked card to the inside, and that will show through when the main card is closed. For a sentiment on this one, I'm using the Gina K Enjoyable Greetings stamp set. This is an older one. I'm using the stamp that says enjoy along with the coordinating die. Instead of the word enjoy, I just want joy for this holiday card. So I am using a piece of scrap paper to cover up the E and the N so that I can ink just the word joy itself with black ink. I'll use the coordinating die to cut it out, and then I will use my scissors to cut off that extra so I end up with just the word joy. I also wanted a few stamped snowflakes die cut and added to the front of our card. So I am inking up some snowflakes with the 3 same colors I used for our inked background on the inside. This is the medium orchid color, and I'm just inking up parts of each of the stamp. Then I inked up other parts of the stamp with the medium lilac color, And then finally, some blue raspberry. It's okay if some of the inks overlap. This will give you a great blended stamped image with lots of color to it. And all of these colors will match our card inside. I stamped more snowflakes than I needed, but I wasn't sure which ones I wanted on my card, and I'll save the rest for later. Now I can glue all of these die cuts to the front of the card. I'm being selective about where I put the adhesive so that it's only glued to the white frame on the front of the card, not to the inked background on the inside, or I would end up gluing my card shut. I also stamped a small sentiment on a white cardstock strip, and I'm putting glue on the back of that. I'll position this on the inside inked mini card so that it's hidden by the frame of the window on the front. So I just scoot it down so it's hidden there, so when the card is closed, you don't see it. But when you open it, you see that greeting on the inside too. I also added some iridescent confetti here and there to the mini card for a bit of sparkle. So here you can see how you have a window on the front of the card and a mini card on the inside. Now this worked really well with that window die included in this master layout set, but you could instead use a small rectangle or square die and die cut 4 openings in the front of your note card to create a window effect also. But I gotta say, I really think it's brilliant that Gina designed that window die so that it has the extra metal on the outside, which makes it easy to line up on the front of a panel or card like this. Before we go, I wanted to show you one more card I made using that Master Layouts die set. I'm not going to show you the process because it's basically just die cutting and gluing together, but it uses the smaller rectangle postage dies included in the set. I just wanted to make this as a reminder that there's a lot included in that Master Layouts die set. I just focused on the large postage die and that window die, but this uses the smaller rectangle ones. I cut the solid rectangles from different scraps of colored cardstock and white heat embossed love on each of them from that Gina K Wishing You stamp set. I then die cut the postage die from white cardstock and glued those together and added it onto a white note card that I used the Gina K Swiss Dots embossing folder on. I also added a silver glitter cardstock die cut heart to the center of each of those little postage stamps. This is one that you could do a bunch of die cutting with scraps, then glue them all together while watching your favorite movie and end up with a lot of great cards that could be used for many different occasions. I hope this video inspired you to look at your products a bit differently, to stretch the ways you use them. If you're interested in what I used, I have it all linked below in my YouTube description. And at the end here, I'll link to a couple other videos that have similar or related techniques if you are looking for more ideas. Thanks for spending this time with me. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.